I woke up suspended off the ground in a small dark room with that ever so familiar feeling of not knowing where the hell I was. The walls were covered in shelves that were packed with cleaning supplies, paper products, and canned goods. Then I tried to sit up. The world shook and swung under me. It took me a few tries before I realized I was being held up by a braided rope hammock. "You awake?" a voice asked to my right. I turned to see the gas station clerk from earlier, Jerry, sitting on a milk crate and smiling. I tried to sit up, but pain shot through my leg like electricity, and I fell back into the hammock. Where am I? What happened? Did you paint my nails? I looked at the red nail polish on my right hand, then at Jerry. "You like it?" "No." "Okay, that's fair. You're more of a fire truck than a cherry red anyway, but I thought I'd take the chance." I looked at the source of pain on my leg and saw that it had been wrapped tightly in a makeshift duct tape cast that was wrapped around my pants leg. Then, that's when it all came back to me. A bizarre memory that would have been out of a David Lynch fever dream. I reached out and grabbed Jerry by the collar of his shirt and yanked him close to me. "I need to talk to the sheriff. Now." The man in the bear costume stayed at the other side of the clearing, spinning his arms and legs in a bizarre dance that looked like a PCP Jack teenager at the disco, occasionally looking my way to make sure I was still watching. I slowly started to back up, putting one foot behind the other, carefully adding distance between us. I didn't know the score, but I sure as hell didn't want to push my luck. Once I got back to my car, I could call the sheriff and have him bring all his deputies and an extra-large straitjacket, but that plan required that I first get back to my car. I had my eyes locked on the bear man, so I saw exactly when the arrow whipped right through him. It came from somewhere in the forest behind him, entered the bear suit from the back, just below the armpit, and passed straight through the other side towards me. I didn't even have time or the reflexes to dodge. Next thing I knew, I had been struck. I hit the ground and the man in the bear costume grabbed his wounds and danced his way back into the woods. The arrow had lodged itself deep in my left leg, a few inches above the knee, with the light wooden shaft protruding straight out. It was the single most painful thing I had ever experienced, and sheer adrenaline is probably the only reason I wasn't going right into shock. Two men donned head to toe in camouflage and carrying hunting bows stepped into the clearing at the same spot where the bear man had emerged. They both had shades of green smeared all over their face like war paint. The fat one was cussing and yelling when he emerged. I screamed, partially to get their attention, and partially because I just couldn't help it. "Aw, shit!" yelled the skinny one. "Did we get you?" He dropped his bow and ran over to me while the fat one put his own over a sling on his shoulder and slowly walked over to join us. "Who the fuck are you?" asked the fat one. The skinny one pulled an 8-inch knife out of a sheath on his belt and sliced open my pant leg around where the arrow had lodged. I took a look and wished that I hadn't. "You shot me!" I yelled. It was about the only thing I could muster to say that wasn't a lengthy paragraph of expletives that I couldn't hold in if I tried. The skinny one looked at me defensively. "Well, hell, dude. We weren't expecting no people but us out here." "Bear's gonna get away now, boy," complained the fat one. "You think you can walk?" I didn't answer straight away. The shaft of the arrow was shaking with my pulse, and I knew it was embedded into my femur. The fat man knelt down for a closer look and whistled. "Yep, that's in there all right." I closed my eyes and tried to focus on anything but the pain. Every breath, every heartbeat, every micro movement radiated through the arrow like an antenna into the wound and down the nerve in my leg. My eyes shot open and I let out a scream. The fat one reached out and grabbed the arrow at the base. With his other hand, he grabbed the top and snapped the shaft. I collapsed onto my back and stared at the sky, hoping that the pain would just knock me out already. "There," said the hunter. "Now we don't gotta worry about it snagging on every little thing. Ned, help me get him to the four-wheeler." The other one, Ned, pulled me to my feet and together we went back into the woods. I kept an arm over both their shoulders, basically hanging and letting my bad leg drag the whole way. Not too far into the forest there was a small trail that we followed close to a half-mile before we reached the four-wheelers. I don't remember the ride back to the truck, but I remember smacking me in the face when we got there to make sure I was still alive. "Y'all get him?" asked the fat woman sitting in the driver's seat of the white extended cab truck, stained brown from countless layers of dried mud. The fat man got off the four-wheeler and answered, "Nah, he got away." "I clipped him, though," bragged Ned as he jumped down from the four-wheeler. "Left a blood trail, so we may be able to get him." "Shut up, boy. We ain't going nowhere tonight. Gotta get home before the sun goes down." The woman looked at me and smiled a big, toothless smile, her bright red cheeks standing out against her pale skin, like she had already had a few too many drinks. "Oh, you got something, though." The fat one grabbed me by the hair and yanked me off the four-wheeler, throwing me to the ground. I let out another scream. "What the fuck is wrong with you? Are you crazy? That thing out there isn't a bear, it's a person. And you assholes shot me. I need to go to the hospital for Christ's sake." The fat man looked at the woman and said, "Yep, Ned got this one by accident." "Well, it ain't a total loss then," she said back. "Why is he still alive?" "They're easier to move when they're alive, and they taste better if they're scared when you put them down." What? Ned let out a whoop and then jumped on top of me, pushing my face into the ground and yanking at my pockets. He managed to dig out my phone, wallet, and keys, before I finally managed to get a handful of dirt and smacked it into his eyes. He fell off me and I jumped to my feet and started running towards the safety of the forest when... bang. I froze. Now, I wouldn't be too keen on running back out there if I were you. I put my hands in the air and slowly turned around to see the face of the fat one pointing a .45 at me, from what I would consider point-blank range. Close enough that I could recognize it was a Dan Wesson specialist. These guys were bow hunting for sport, but smart enough to bring along something heavier just in case. Smarter than me, that's for sure. "Why not?" I asked. "I doubt there's anything out there as bad as right here." "Well, that's where you're wrong." "Oh!" cooed the woman from inside the truck. "Shoot him, shoot him." "Shut up, woman. I ain't gonna shoot him just 'cause you say so." "Hey now," I said softly. Suddenly the pain in my leg didn't seem so bad. "Let's talk about this for a second. You don't have to kill me. I don't know you from Adam. You could just leave me here, and we can forget all about this." Ned reached for the gun and said, "Let me do it. You got to do the last one." The fat one sighed and handed over the gun. "Fine, but aim carefully. One shot, one kill." "Wait!" I screamed. "I know where the bear is. I can take you to him." "He's lying," whined the fat woman. "No, I'm not. We're friends. Why the hell else would I be out there in the middle of nowhere with the bear?" Ned gave the fat man a, "What now?" look. The fat man scrunched up his face and thought about it. "Okay," he finally said. "Take us to him. Then maybe we'll let you go. Maybe." 1 gun, 2 hunting knives, 2 bows, a quiver of arrows. I raced every scenario in my mind quickly. How do I get one of their weapons without getting killed first? Forest, four-wheeler, truck. Is there any realistic way to escape without being shot in the back? Things weren't looking good, but I was still breathing for the time being. It'll be faster if we take the truck. The hunters were smarter than I would have liked. The big one, I picked up that his name was Paw, put me in the back seat of the cab next to Ned. He threw all of his weapons, knives included, into the truck bed and climbed into the back with us. I was sandwiched with Ned on my right and Paw on my left, and that tiny vehicle smelled like shit. Literally, it smelled like human feces. The seats were torn up and wet, and I saw a few small cockroaches scurry away from us. After Pa slammed his door shut, a tiny face looked back at me from the passenger seat. A little girl with matted blonde hair, no older than 10. She smiled and said, "Are we gonna eat this one?" "Probably," said the fat woman as she cranked the engine. "Which way?" asked Pa. I pointed straight ahead. "Get up to the main road and take a right." "You better not be trying nothing," warned Pa. We hit the main road and the truck climbed up to a slow 30 miles per hour. Go straight for about a mile. Then you'll see a dirt road on the left. "Ain't no dirt road," squealed the fat woman in a high-pitched voice. "I know these woods like the back of my hands. I ain't remember no dirt road up here." Pa punched me hard in the stomach. "You think you're funny, boy?" He knocked the wind out of me and I doubled over in the seat as they all started laughing maniacally. There's an expression called ring off, which is much worse than the phrase implies. If you're unfamiliar with the term, allow me to explain. Trappers have to check their traps frequently because if they don't, an animal's survival instinct will kick in and they'll free themselves, one way or another. The most common form of ring off is when a coyote or a jaguar, or anything with sharp enough teeth that chews through its own legs and sets itself free. It ain't pretty, but it sure beats the alternative, right? In that moment, I understood exactly how those trapped animals felt. I bit down hard on the exposed piece of arrow shaft as hard as I could stand, and yanked it out as fast as I could. For the second time in as many hours, I experienced the single most painful thing I'd ever feel. But now, the arrow was free from my leg, and I had a weapon. I spit the broken arrowhead into my left hand and stabbed it into Pa's neck, cutting his jugular into a muffled gurgle. "Ah, shit!" yelled Ned as I swung myself onto the seat and planted the foot of my good leg against the side of his face with as much force as I could muster. I pushed his head into the glass of the window, all while holding onto the arrow still embedded in Pa's neck. The little girl started screaming and the fat woman turned around to see what the fuss was about. I turned to her, and then I noticed it. Maybe 100 feet ahead. The man in the bear costume stepping out of the woods crossing the road. I closed my eyes and braced for impact. She must have looked back and seen the bear because the truck lurched wildly to one side, then back to the other. Like she had to swerve to miss, then overcorrected. Then we started rolling. The crash sounded like an explosion. Pieces of broken glass and blood rained down all around me as I hit my head on the roof, then the seat, then the door. Then finally the world stopped spinning and I was on my back with blood stinging my eyes. A warm hand reached under me and dragged me out of the wreckage, and a twisted mass of body and debris, through the cold wet grass, through a ditch, and then dropped me into the road. I wiped my eyes and then looked up at the giant black buttons of a man in the bear costume. He waved at me and then gave me an excited double thumbs up, before walking back to the truck, unzipping the fly on the bear suit, and then pissing all over the wreckage. He did a little jig off into the forest, and that was the last I saw of him. What the fuck is happening? I checked the truck, the driver, Ned, Pa, were all dead. The little girl was nowhere to be found. I know if she had survived, it's unlikely that I'd have any luck finding her. The weapons were gone too, probably flung out in the crash. Even though I would have felt a lot safer packing, it wasn't worth my time to track them down. I made a quick bandage out of my shirt sleeve and then wrapped it around my leg tight enough to slow the bleeding. Then I found a fallen branch, long and strong enough to serve as a walking stick, and started up the road in the direction of the gas station. I must have been one hell of a sight when I got back there. I was torn up and bleeding from several wounds, but none of that seemed to create a sense of care in the clerk behind the register, who still didn't even have the decency to look up from his damn book. I walked over to him and knocked on the counter, finally drawing his attention. I don't know what it takes to impress this guy, but the sight of me nearest to death sure as hell didn't even register with him. "I need to use your phone." He tapped on a small cardboard sign sitting on the counter. In sloppy black Sharpie, someone had written the message, "If you'd like to use the store phone, it's 25 cents per minute. Please pay in advance. There are no exceptions." I reached for my wallet, only to remember that it wasn't on me. Ned had taken it and left it somewhere out in the woods. "Look, asshole, this is a life or death situation. There's been an accident, and I need to call the sheriff." The clerk spun the sign to the opposite side, where someone had written, "No exceptions mean no exceptions. Not even life or death situation. Thank you for understanding. Management." Under normal circumstances, I would have resorted to more physical solution, but at that moment, I started feeling lightheaded and dizzy. Next thing I knew, I was swinging in a hammock with my nails painted. "Where the hell am I?" I repeated the question to Jerry. "You're in the gas station supply closet." "Why?" "Because customers were complaining that they didn't want to step over you every time they wanted to buy something. But don't worry, I already called the deputy that babysits us. She's on her way to arrest you or whatever she does. In the meantime, Jack says you can borrow one of his old crutches." I would like to take this opportunity to thank the 2 patrons in the $10 and above tier, Official Jerboa and Chaos X. Official Jerboa is beating Chaos X up by a single penny. I'm sure he would like me to mention that. You too can become a patron and have your name read at the end here by going to the Patreon in the description.